In this week's Pedal by Pedal, we are talking with artist Ariel Posen about his new custom setup that we just finished for him. We just finished a pedal board for him designed to work in the studio and get him as many sounds and options as possible in the smallest form factor we could get. His pedal choices are quite unique, and I think you're going to enjoy seeing how he uses them in today's interview. We are going to go through every pedal one by one in the order of his signal chain, and he will give us audio examples and insight as we do so. We're also talking about his latest release and a few other insights into his playing and how he approaches the guitar. I think you're going to really enjoy today's Pedal by Pedal. Let's get into the interview, and we are going to start off with a few questions and shortly after get into those audio examples. Okay, so we are here with Ariel today, and we are going to talk about his brand new rig that we just finished setting up for some studio work and upcoming projects. And we're just going to have a chat about, what you've been up to during COVID. You've had a couple of projects and one specific release recently I'm looking forward to chatting about. So why don't we get into it? Welcome, Ariel, and looking forward to having a chat today.
Hey, thanks, man. It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, and thanks for all the help.
Yeah,
it's good to be here.
It's been we've been working on this board for the last few weeks, and a lot of that has been, I guess, kind of focused on the programming side of the board and how the MIDI implementation works, which we'll chat about a little bit later. But I guess a couple of starter questions. You got to have a good warm-up question or two at the beginning, it's mandatory. I just wanted to ask you, I guess, at the outset, one of the things that has stood out to me about your guitar playing, which I absolutely cannot do myself, is the drop tuning that you use. I am so curious about this, and I'm just curious if you have one tuning you stick with, or if you kind of switch it up depending on the song that you're in. Like, what's your approach to guitar in that realm?
Well, it's a lot less complicated than it seems. I either play in standard tuning, or I play in open tuning, and open tuning like open E intervals, so 1-5-1, 3-5-1. That being said, I'll tune different guitars to different keys, so open E flat, open D, open C. It's all the same intervals and all the shapes are the same, but it's just different keys. And for standard tuning, there might be a time where it'd be nice to be in D standard instead of E standard, or C standard, and this guitar is in B standard, which is just standard baritone tuning, and it's just tuned down a fourth. So when I'm actually touring and on the road, I don't have the luxury of taking 5 guitars with me, so I usually just have 2. Taking a B standard guitar with a capo, I can then be in C standard, C sharp standard, D sharp standard, E standard. If I take a guitar in C, I can be in open C sharp, open D sharp, open. It just gives me all those different colors as an open position without bringing the guitar out. So live, that's the main reason why. But also, I've just been writing a lot, and I just really like it. I've just gotten so used to it that I just use it a lot. Like when I'm doing sessions for other people, it's just like one tool in the toolbox. And when I'm recording for myself, even, I'm not playing a drop tune guitar all the time. It does one thing very well, and it does that. It's like it doesn't do other things well. It's no substitute for anything. But again, I'm always trying to just find something a little different, find something sonically speaking new and exciting from what I'd normally be doing. So these have, just really helped serve inspiration in that kind of way.
Is there one that you just always go back to? Like if you're picking up a guitar just at random, want to work on a new song, is there a tuning that it just fits and feels right?
No, I'm 50%, 50-50 between them. Like I'm cozy with either one. I'll honestly just pick up whatever's around. And the good thing about having 2 different ones rather than just committing to one is that if I find like I'm not getting anywhere sometimes, or feeling uninspired, or like I'm not getting an idea, I can just switch tunings and I play slightly differently. Like I feel like open tuning is more like piano and standard tuning is very much guitar like, and it just makes me play different ways. And I I just try different things out. So it's not like one serves better. It's just a matter of personal taste, and I'll just grab whatever I grab, and if it happens, it doesn't. Really, it's not even about the tuning. I'm thinking just melody, chords, the music side of it. So whatever the tool is to get that out, it doesn't make a difference as much.
And what are you in currently with this guitar?
This is in B standard. This is
Okay.
baritone tuning. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So you obviously have been playing guitar for many years, I can assume. Has a pedal board and effects always been a part of your sound, or did that kind of come later on in the process?
I mean, I got my first pedal when I was 14 years old. It was a Crybaby. I thought that was the only thing you needed. I think I had my first foray into like overdrive pedals or anything, or like delay pedals when I was a late bloomer, maybe 17, 18. And I put together I had a 2x4 classic, made a pedal board. My dad helped me with like a Boss, the orange distortion pedal, whatever that one was, a Boss DD6, a tuner, and a vintage Phase 90, my dad's old Phase 90, which I still have. And it was just like those three pedals. And I was just like. And at that point, I started doing gigs for people, bands, artists. And I started learning that the more pedals you have, it just serves as more tools and sounds when you need to replicate something that you're playing. You know, I can't just show up to every gig with just a clean amp and expect me to sound like that recording.
Yeah.
You know? So that's kind of where it came from. At the end of the day, the pedals are great, but they don't define my playing or my sound at all. Like, strip them away, I'll find a way to get the sound out of my head that I'm hearing. Once we get into like crazy delays and stuff like that, obviously you can't replicate that. But bottom line is, I enjoy it. It's fun. I like to have options, and especially like with this board, which we're going to get into, it was about just going deeper into those weirder sounds, stuff that I wouldn't normally need to use live in any way. This was like, I know I'm jumping the gun here, but yeah, I won't jump the gun. Yeah, that's kind of the story.
Yeah, no, I love it. And then in terms of like influences, we talked about the drop tuning and your different approach to voicings and stuff like that. But slide is also a huge part of your sound. And I don't know if you'd go so far to say as it kind of is part of the defining sound of what you do on guitar, but I love what you do with the slide. And again, along the same lines of the tuning, it is something that I cannot replicate to that degree, not even close. And so I love listening to it. Has slide also always been part of what you do, or did that again come later on, kind of like some of the pedals?
It's always been something I did, once I was seriously playing gigs. So when I was, I want to say like 19-ish, 18 or 19, started playing gigs with different bands and had to learn slide parts.
Yeah.
I just started doing it more and more. I guess I took like a natural liking to it, and it seemed to click. It definitely wasn't awesome from the get-go. It took a lot of time. But I enjoyed it. I remember playing slide for people, and they'd be like, "Hey, that sounded good on that song. Why don't you do more of it?" And I was like, "Oh, okay." Not really thinking much of it. And then, I got into some slide players that really spoke to me, specifically a Canadian guy named Kevin Bright. I was listening to him, and that really made me want to explore open tunings. And it just, slide just came from a more melodic inflection kind of route rather than like maybe the more bluesy route or anything like that. So it became a thing that I used to just enhance what I would already be playing with my fingers. It wasn't. I never wanted to play slide like a niche. Sorry, like a novelty. Novelty licks or anything like that.
Awesome. And obviously you're going to play a little bit today, and maybe we can, I don't know if you have a slide close by, but maybe we can hear some of that as well. But I think we should probably just get into the pedal board and talk about some of your pedals. Can you tell us, I guess, why this pedal board needed to come about? Because you already have another pedal board that you use, obviously. So what is kind of the overall vision or purpose of this board that you now have?
Yeah, I have a number of pedal boards. I have they all range in size. Currently, I have a smaller version Schmidt-Array, which was put together wonderfully, and it fits in a suitcase. It's my touring pedal board. It has all the sounds I need for replicating songs for my records. It's easy access. It works great, and I've been using that in the studio. No problems there. It is actually quite good for recording. However, I have a couple of these, these preamp pedals by Chase Bliss and the Digit, and I just had some pedals that don't fit on a pedal board like that. I wanted to put together a specific studio only board just because, in not a lot of gigs and shows going on the past year, and still for a while I think I'm still going to be confined primarily to the studio. I wanted to put together a dedicated board for, rather than just one delay pedal, I want to have a bunch of options. Rather than just one reverb, I want to have a bunch more options. Even for overdrives, I just wanted to have a bunch more options and explore them primarily with MIDI, which is my kryptonite. And that's a big reason I wanted your help, and you did a great job. But yeah, it was just taking what I already use. It's all the same sounds I always use. In fact, a lot of familiar pedals I would normally use. I just wanted to get deeper into the modulation, the delays, the reverbs, and some of the overdrives, and just have them in an efficient medium, if you will, for access.
Awesome. Oh, I love it. All right, well, let's get into it. I don't know how easy it is to make this change. I'm kind of throwing this at you last second, but could we hear just your clean sound, no pedals, and then we'll just go through the signal chain?
Absolutely. So just clean. I'm going through the 2-rock.
Beautiful.
So that's clean. Do you want to go in order or reverse order? I guess in order, right?
Yeah, let's go from beginning to end, and we can just chat about why you like the pedal, what it normally gets used for, I guess. Why you turn that one on. So we start. You already mentioned this actually. This is on a Schmidt-Array, which is a beautifully built. It's like a piece of furniture kind of pedal board. It's just beautiful to look at. It's really functional. But the Schmidt-Array has a patch bay on the side that you plug in and out of. So your guitar goes into the side of the Schmidt-Array, and then we go straight up to your Polytune. I don't think we need to demo that one unless you have any quirky uses for it. And then after the Polytune, we go straight into the Morningstar ML5, which is a 5-loop true bypass looper. That is MIDI controlled as well, which we can talk about later. And we modded this so that you could put your preamp in the middle of one of those 5 loops, in between 2 loops in there, which we'll get to in a sec. But the first pedal up in your signal chain that actually makes a difference on your noise is the Octaland. So why don't you tell us about the Octaland, why you use it typically, and show us a lick or two.
Yeah, I always like to have a fuzz, like a fuzz face or a tone bender or like a zonk machine type of, huge fuzz. And I like to have an octave up. And the last couple of years, I've really just been getting more into the Cobb sound, which is still octave up, but it's just fatter and meatier. It's not as shrill and bright as an Octavian. So just a personal preference. I might grow out of that soon too, but I use that a lot on the record, and I've just been using that a lot live. So the new Octaland by Jesse Davey, actually, I'll just raise this up, and you can see it right there, is fantastic. He's updated it so you can actually get a lot of those Cobb sounds and different variations, and it sounds really good. It sounds like this. I'm going to step on it, clean. And usually I'm going to skip ahead because I often have a drive on with it. I like to hit it with something. So if I kick on the Duelist here. So you can hear it just gets a bit pointier, a bit more muscle, if you will. I have zero gain on the Octoland. It's completely gainless. I like to get my gain from fuzzes from hitting it with another drive. And you'll see that in the next one specifically. But that's how I've been using that one currently. It's really warm and huge.
And I
Comically
also,
huge.
I noticed that this is something that maybe not all people know about fuzzes, but they often sound, they'll come into their own when you switch onto your neck pickup, and they sound quite good on the neck pickup. Do you kind of go back and forth between bridge, middle neck, or?
Yeah. I'm not biased or favoring any. I'll use them all.
Yep.
And sometimes it can get a little too warm, especially in a lower tuning. Sometimes it can get a little too bright, shrill. So it's just a matter of reading the room per se with your sound and like in context of how you're using it, and then just adjusting to that.
So that was the Octoland, and then in loop 2 in the Morningstar ML5 is the Dan Drive. Why don't you tell us about this one?
So like I was saying, after an octave pedal, I like to have a big fuzz. This is like the zonk machine, basically, is what the sound is. And again, I have it set very low gain, just on its own. It sounds like this. If you can believe it, that's low gain. But once I kick on the Duelist, so I like this pedal because you kind of get that saggy thing going on,
Yep.
which is fun and different. Once you kick on the Duelist, it starts to sag, kind of like that broken battery sound, which doesn't work for everything, but it's a sound. It's great. It works for what I'm doing, yeah.
So that was the Dan Drive Secret Machine in loop 2, and then this is where we did that kind of mod to the ML5. We were working out that signal chain for ages, trying to figure out where everything should be, and the perfect signal chain could not be done with the hardware that we had. The perfect signal chain for you and your board was that Dan Drive, then the Chase Bliss Automatone MK2, the preamp, but it couldn't be in a loop because you needed loops for other pedals. So we did an insert, and now we have the MK2, which I have to say as a side note, having the MK2 here, your MK2, was the first time I'd ever played it, and I considered just cutting and running. I just was like, I just won't answer any of his texts. I'm going to take this thing and go. It is awesome. It's such a cool preamp. And again,
it's great.
From kind of your brief, wanting to have a flexible board with a ton of sounds on it, this ticks a few boxes. Is there any reason why you chose this pedal in particular?
Well, like I was saying, I got my hands on both these Automatone pedals, and I just from playing them at NAMM and stuff like that, I knew how much more options there were and how many more the possibilities there were. It's one thing to have a great overdrive or two great overdrives like I normally do it, but to have yet another overdrive that could also do a bunch of fuzz sounds and something that I could just hit it with another pedal was really appealing to me. So it was just, again, studio, more options, more sounds, more variation, and like one less pedal that I have to bring in a bag if I'm going to a session just for extra options, which I would normally do anyways. I just have a lot of options in a smaller footprint already. So that was the biggest reason.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that we did that insert in the ML5 because I really wanted this one to be after the Dan Drive because of the fuzz sounds that I'm using. I didn't want that to be after the Duelist or the Broadcast, so I'm very glad we got that working. So let me show you how it sounds. I should also say, the the programming side is fantastic. So for the Mark II, the 1978, the Polydigit, and the Therme, the way it's set up on the MC8 here is that, you know, if I turn it on, Mark II, it's on. But if I just hold it down, I'm suddenly on a preamp Mark II specific page. And you can probably see I have 7 presets ready to go. So I'll show you, I'll just quickly go through the presets that I have. I've named them all with, you know, kind of temporary names, but they all kind of resemble what they sound like. So this is called Neve, kind of like right into a Neve console, which essentially is kind of like what I use my broadcast for, or what the broadcast is based on. Off. This is called Tweed. And this one's called Pillow, and it just is supposed to be that pillowy fuzz sound, which is very warm and not bright, but once you hit it with the Duelist, so that's that. Headroom I really like. In fact, for recording, I've been getting a lot of use of it so far. Just like, I'll go off. Just clean it. It's literally what it is. It's headroom, and it's just more, but with a little bit of dirt. More air to it. And obviously with MIDI, I love how, you know, I can, maybe I'm not getting enough gain, so I just turn this up. Just for more gain, and then if I realize, or if I decide, you know what, that's too much gain, I just press it and it goes back on the slider exactly where it was. This one's called Knife. This is supposed to be like a Vox sounding. This one's called Boost, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's very subtle, so. More so to be used with something like, let's say, the Duelist. Off. On. Very subtle.
Beautiful.
And then the last one's called Nasty, which is. Kind of like a big muff kind of sounding thing.
Beautiful.
And that's that.
I just have to reiterate that this was all done with like the last, I don't know, 2 minutes or so of audio examples it's been done with one pedal and changing a few techniques on your guitar along the way. And so it's just a hugely versatile pedal, both in the way you're playing it and in what's included on the pedal itself. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's the whole point, just options, you know?
Yep.
So many more options. In fact, maybe I'll switch guitars just for something a bit more familiar sounding. Just do a Strat. So that's just clean, nasty. And that's the other thing too, is like once you start using something with single coils, really low output pickups, all those sounds react differently, which is great. And that's why variety is important.
Whole bunch
So
of
why
different
don't I,
colors.
Yeah. So I've shown you you've heard the Duelist, but I guess you haven't heard it on its own. We didn't put it through the loop because we didn't have to. It's just easy access right here. So I mean. That's the blues breaker side. This is the tube screamer side. Yeah, great pedal. Again, there's two different drives there too, so.
Beautiful. And that one we programmed it's in loop 3 of the ML5. We programmed that one essentially when you plug in your board, loop 3 turns on and you just control it at the pedal itself.
Right.
Yeah, cool. And that is another pedal I have not had any significant time with over the years. And again, like, it just sounds incredible. It's a great pedal, has some great tone controls, gain structure. It's beautiful.
It is good. It is good.
And it seems like you're using that one, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like you're using that one quite a bit in tandem with other drives. Is that true, or would you also use it quite a bit on its own?
I mean, if it was live, it's usually an always-on pedal for me. But for recording, it's such a different ball game. I usually start with a clean canvas, if you will, with no pedals on. I use the next pedal, the Broadcast AP, primarily as my number one recording overdrive. And the main thing about it is I actually don't like too much gain. I find with recording, less gain actually makes something sound bigger and wider and huger. Just in my experience, I've learned that. And the Broadcast can get crazy. It can do a fuzz. But the way I have it set, it works great as a boost. But it also... So like I'll keep the Duelist on. And I'll turn the Broadcast on. But just on its own, it sounds like this. So this is without. Just that hair, you know? And, you know, oftentimes recording, that's... I don't need more gain than that sometimes. So it's a great pedal.
That's awesome.
Highly recommend, but I'm biased.
And with now that we're getting out of your gain stage, just one last question. With these pedals and you know, talking about how the pickups react, going, you know, single humbucker, whatever you're using, are you also the kind of guy that will use your volume pedal, not your volume pedal, your volume pot on your guitar to clean things up?
Oh, yeah.
And add more
all the
in?
time, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I live at like, I know I've been giving you full volume everything, but on the Duelist, this is full volume. I would live normally around. Kind of gives you that clean, but with that hair. So yeah, big time. Live or recording, I am 99% of the time riding my volume.
Awesome. It's such a great lesson for some, you know, younger guitar players to hear as well. That in and of itself is like a drive pedal, just controlling that volume pot as you're playing.
I mean, for so many years, I would buy a new drive pedal and be like, oh, it sounds too high gain still. Like I'm still not sounding like what I'm hearing in my head. And then I realized, like, you're just feeding it too much.
Yep.
And if you feed it less, you can start to really control the amount of gain, obviously, but most importantly, you start controlling your dynamics, which is like everything for me. That's the most important thing. So highly recommend.
Yeah.
Mess with it.
Awesome. Love it. And then the last loop in the ML5, before we get into some of your other wet effects, is the Keeley Hydra. This is a pretty cool pedal, pretty fun one. I am actually curious how you use this one. Do you want to talk us through this one as well?
Super simple. I actually just I underuse this pedal. I don't even use the reverb at the moment just because I can't access it. I wanted to use this pedal just for the trem. I really think it does a very fantastic harmonic trem. Moves the air, doesn't affect your sound too much. sounds like this. So. Yeah, that's honestly how I use it. Does a very good harmonic trim. But I mean, it does a sine, it does a just normal vibrato, it does a plate reverb, spring reverb, and like a room sound. Very good. If you like to fiddle with things, it's definitely a good pedal for that. But it does a very good harmonic trim, and that's how I'm using it for now.
Awesome. Love that. And just my last question with this pedal, do you kind of have one trim sound you normally use and you just turn it on or off, or do you in studio kind of tweak it quite a bit and depending on the song?
Most of the time I'm just using my one sound, but if someone asks for a specific kind of tremolo, hey, I don't like the harmonic, not that anyone ever gets that specific. Or like, you know, can you make it faster? Can you make it slower? Can you adjust the speed? For sure. I'm always happy to adjust, but that's my go-to. Like if I'm, 90% of the time I'm being hired to do sessions these days, people want me to do Ariel Posen. So in that case, I'm going to set my sounds the way I like them and how I use them rather than messing with them too much. So that's my default standard tempo, amount of depth, all that stuff.
Yeah, beautiful. And then that obviously lends itself to the fact, which some guys might be curious about, that you don't worry about tremolo being locked in with the tempo of a song.
Never.
Yeah, awesome.
I mean, that's a very pop thing. What I do I don't find myself in those situations a lot. I haven't been in years where I've been on a gig where I've had to line up like tap tempos or like program them to the click or anything like that. That's all great. I like trim being its own entity where it's just there moving air in its own way, not even listening to what the tempo of a song is. They should be separate.
Yep.
The way I use it.
Yeah. Love it. Oh, that's great, man. Great sounding pedal. So then we leave the ML5 and we go into your last few pedals. And really, we're now getting into kind of the heavy MIDI section programming alongside the MK2 preamp we already talked about. So we leave the ML5 and now we go into the Chase Bliss Therme, also hooked up to MIDI. This can be a crazy pedal. Again, looking forward to hearing how you use it. What's your approach?
Yeah, this is a weird one. If you don't know what it is, I'll open the lid here so you guys can see it. This guy here. So it's a delay, but it's also a pitch shifter. And I wanted some weirder sounds, just as options. So I programmed a few, so all the MIDI sounds, all the MIDI pedals, like I said, all have their own dedicated page. So I'm going to go to that page for the Therme. You obviously added live mode and a tab tempo, which is fantastic because I can't actually reach the pedal with the lid on top. So that's great. I'll just go through the sounds. So this is the simple delay sound. And you can hear like that pitch shifting thing still, right? This is a slap. If I play a chord, you really hear the...
Oh, beautiful.
Kind of have the mix a little hot, so it's like you hear your original attack, but then the slap kind of dominates it. Like you can have a slap delay from the Poly. I have a slap on the 1978 too. A pedal like this, it's got to have character, and that the whole point of it was just to do something different, even like a very unorthodox sounding slap. That Then I have 3 really weird sounds, and I just called them random things. So this is called lo-fi. I don't even know how to describe these, but... Okay.
Awesome.
This one. And we got this one. You can hear it takes the pitch, goes down. It goes down a fourth, basically. Like I heard it do that. Okay, so yeah, it basically sometimes goes down a fourth. You can hear that. It's sometimes it's a fourth, sometimes it's not. But it's a very cool sound just for like solo, single notes. And this is the last sound. I specifically wanted this sound. I call it bounce because it sounds very bouncy.
I love it. So practically, where would you use this? Like, is there a specific song or a type of song or genre?
I mean, it would be very much a texture thing. It would be the kind of thing where you hear it and you're like, am I hearing something like that? Or is it's like tricking your ears? You know, so many subtle sounds and just shapes and textures I find have the most effect when you can't actually hear it. It's like, is it there? Is it not there?
Yeah.
They just kind of blend in. So it wouldn't be something necessarily to like stick out right in your face and go, hey, here's this sound. It'd be more just like... And like, you know, there's a million other things going on.
Yeah.
This sound specifically is really cool, and all of the sounds on this pedal are very touch sensitive. So like if I play really quiet, but if I go, it really reacts to your touch sensitivity, which is really cool. So you can kind of control how much mix you want from your delays. I like that a lot. That's really cool.
Yeah.
But that's how I use that pedal.
Awesome. All right, and so that one obviously is hooked up to MIDI, which we talked about, and then one of the other pedals I have not gotten tons of time with was the Poly, the next pedal in line. And this one, you can, it's not, there's no point talking about what it can do because it can kind of do everything. Routing, signal chain, modules, it's got it all. So obviously we can't talk about every scenario, but what is the key purpose of this pedal on your board and how you use it?
Well, I wanted to get some sounds that I often use and some familiar ones, you know, so this filter sound I use a lot on the new record. And I use a rotary. And I like how you set this up, so the rotary, once I kick that on, has its own page of light, medium, and heavy. And obviously like the horn speed and the break. They're all very subtle, but like it makes a difference. So Leslie, filter, Loki, who makes this pedal, he did an IR of a Fender Echo Reverb, which is a sound I've been chasing for a long time, which is those old oil can delays. And he did it. He did an amazing job. It sounds like this. And again, light, medium. They're all very subtle. You put a kill dry as well, which is great. Everything else, and there's a plate reverb. So there's plate 1, which is a bit more subtle. And then plate 2, which is just a touch more. Or I could use both of them at the same time. Really nice. Other than that, I made a couple presets. You know, I just wanted a backup normal slap. I wanted just like a normal tape delay. And this is really cool. This is called Black Star. Loki knows someone that did a bunch of IRs in random rooms around the world. And this is an IR of the reverb at the Winnipeg Legislative Building in the basement, which is hysterical. So I felt like I had to program it. And,
of course.
There's some extra kind of funny, interesting stuff going on. You know, it's just pretty inspiring and lush sounding. And then, of course, you know, the thing we're not really talking about here is that I can just go on any of these pedals and adjust them. Like, there's like a million other sounds. Just like an Evitide H9 or something, the Poly has any sound you could ever want. So that's just what I've kind of easy access programmed. I can just like use the touchscreen and find any other sound. Same with the Mark IIs, like you can adjust it however much you want. But those are the presets I have for now. Covers a lot of ground.
And the thing a lot of our listeners kind of ask about is wet, dry, wet. They want a wet, dry, wet rig. And to do that properly, you need to run all these lines in parallel and have a dry through with kill dry, like you mentioned. And you can do all of that on the Poly. You can essentially set up your reverbs and delays in parallel and kill dry, all that. And so I had so much fun and also a bit of a time learning how to use it because there's just so much you can do with this thing. So it is a very fun pedal to get into that type of thing. And it's really cool to see how you're using it with the rotary and the oil can and all these different sounds that you have programmed in. So very cool pedal.
It's insane. It's an insane pedal, and I don't even think I'm not even, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm not even scraping the surface. Like you could take something like the rotary, and I can put a delay into that effect as well from the Poly. I can put another reverb. I can put a pitch shifting octafuzz on that from the you can do all these crazy things with blending the effects and the modules, and you could even have it so I have a reverb and a phaser on, and when I press the switch, it turns the phaser off but keeps the reverb on. Like, you can do all these crazy things. It's such a deep pedal.
Yeah,
super deep.
And also an Australian company. I was talking with Lockie, trying to set up a couple things with this, and chatted to him in Melbourne, Australia. And great guy, great company. Really cool. So we had this one hooked up in stereo out of the Poly, and then we go into the last pedal in your chain, the Chase Bliss, again, 1978 CXM 1978 reverb. Very deep as well. Tell us how you use it.
I'm actually blown away by this thing. I've been using this. I'll show you the presets. I have a couple reverbs, a couple room sounds. That was very important. I wanted to have a couple settings where it sounded like you were room micing something. And then a couple cool delays. If anything, I used more of like the reverb side of this than the delay side. I'll just go through them. I have this drone sound here. Let me do that again. Oh, you know what? I need to turn it on first. Go like this. Kind of keeps going and going.
Awesome.
Gets crazy. So there's a drone. I have another plate. I have like more of a hall reverb. So this is the plate. This is the hall. And then I called this one shoegaze just because it's kind of weird and makes you have to look down at your feet a bunch. Again, really touch sensitive. To me, it's like there's a spring reverb in there, and there's like a very subtle pulsing like tape delay going. And you hear how it kind of like crispifies a bit. So for like a big, nice beautiful for that. The last delay is a slap, and I actually called it oil because I made it sound like that oil can delay, but a slap version of it. And I don't know what makes it oil. I just called it that. I think the oil thing is warmer and more dominant. So like again, it's like that mix repeat is a bit stronger in volume. And if you're in the room, you hear it pushing air. You really notice it pushing that air. So hopefully it comes across right now, but. Okay, the last two sounds are the two room sounds. So just imagine you got an amp in a room, you're close micing it, but you're also putting a microphone at the very back end of the room and you're only listening to that microphone. This is the sound of a room that is carpeted and like super dead, and that's why it's called carpet. So without it, sounds like this. So that's that one. It sounds just like a very dead room, which is very cool. Then the opposite of that would be something like a garage, a very live sounding room. So without it, it sounds like this. With it. The carpet room. So, I mean, they're subtle, they're kind of similar, but they're also very different. And that's it. And again, like it's one of those pedals where you can go in, tweak it as much as you want. If you want to go back to a preset, immediately it calls it up. No fuss, no issues. And I gotta say that the Chase Bliss pedals, they used to be a lot more complicated to program MIDI to. They are so simple now. It's literally just make a preset, make sure you're in the editor on the MC8 and like know what PC number you're doing, hold it down, and it's like it's saved. For someone like me where MIDI is kryptonite, it's very easy. So if you're discouraged by MIDI, they've made it a lot easier for you now.
Yeah. And I think, one of the questions that people might be asking, because the 1978 is not a cheap pedal. So they might be asking themselves like, well, why would I spend X amount of dollars on that when I could get a much cheaper pedal that still has plate, it still has room, it still has pre-delay, all that type of stuff. And I don't know if you would agree or add anything, but to me, when I was playing that pedal, it was just like the sounds and algorithms are thick, and they just have this quality and this tactile feel to them that you don't get in all other reverb pedals. And would you add or agree? What would you say?
I'd agree. I mean, the sounds are endless. They're thick. It's how it feels too. Like you were saying, it really, it just really stands out. You can tell just by going through all the presets how much time and effort has gone into this. And once you start getting in the woods and like messing around and making your own sounds, the possibilities are kind of just endless. So the options are one huge thing I think you're paying for, but also, I mean, look at the design of that thing. Those things are, you know, start putting these sliders and all these fancy things in. I mean, I think that's a big reason for probably the cost, the cosmetic side and like the functional side. It's a super cool pedal. I'm really into the idea of having something so vast but so easy to use. I think that's the biggest thing for me is so many options, so many sounds, but very user-friendly. And you don't have to like, you know, do too much digging around. It's right in front of you. You do that, you got it. You don't do, you know, it's very easy.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm all
and
about
that. It seems like a pedal that inspires you to play more rather than less. Like you can get lost in some of those sounds that it has in there.
For sure. And I mean, basically all these pedals are like that. That was a huge part of it. That's why they're on this board. It's because you can get lost. They should be inspiring. Like I said at the beginning of this video, the pedals don't define the playing, but when they serve as a tool that can like provide inspiration or ideas, that's really their job. That's what they're supposed to do. And that's when you're almost using them more like an instrument rather than just... It's never a crutch, you know. I think a lot of people who look down on pedals think of it as a crutch or something like that. I think of them as like instruments, like mini instruments that can help provide a different sound or texture that you can't get with just a guitar and an amp. So that's what it's all about.
That is some very good insight that I hope people listen to when they're watching this interview, because it's so true.
Hopefully.
Not letting your gear become a crutch and letting it enhance what you're already doing. I think it's brilliant. And then I guess lastly, we leave the 1978 in stereo again. We go back to that patch panel on the side of the Schmidt array where we started this whole thing. And then you go out to your amps and that's it. Kind of plug in one cable for power, 3 cables if you're running stereo, 1 for guitar, 2 for 2 amps, and then you're all set up and ready to do your session. So it's a beautiful board, man, and some awesome pieces of gear, obviously, as we've just heard. So I don't know if you have any last thoughts on the pedal board, but I also wanted to talk about your latest release after we're done with the board.
Yeah. Well, the last thing I was going to say was thank you, man. First of all, so happy to collaborate. I've had the great fortune of collaborating with amazing pedal board and pedal people, and I've been watching Goodwood from afar for a long time. I know how good everything is that I've seen. And especially when I found out you're Canadian too, just like, well, I feel like we have to do this now. And you were just so easy considering we were in different cities. Communication was super easy. You were always answering the phone, always troubleshooting. And it's clean as hell, looks wonderful, and most importantly, works beautifully. And yeah, just thank you, man.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for giving us the opportunity. It's been a lot of fun. And I guess now that we have a little bit of an insight into your approach to sounds and how you create some of these sounds and layers that you do on guitar, you've obviously been putting this to work over the past, from memory, you'd mentioned couple years, has kind of gone into this latest release, which is Headway, your newest album. I started listening to this while I was working on your board, actually. I put it on, I was working through the signal chain, the cables and all that, and had it on the background. So admittedly, I've been through the album about 5 times now, but I don't really know any of the song names because I've been, head down into your board while I was listening to it. So why don't you tell us about it, like quick overview of the album, how it's been going, and any insider facts that maybe we wouldn't know from just a listen through on iTunes or Spotify?
Well, I've done a lot of interviews on this already, so I don't want to like repeat information. I mean, if you there's a bunch of YouTube videos talking about it, but I mean, the album was recorded just like I do any other record. You know, I do it at the same studio in Winnipeg. Keep it very simple. You know, I did that whole album primarily with just the 2-rock amp. I had my big sized pedal board with a bunch of other pedals. I had a bunch of guitars. That's very general information, I guess. But yeah, just with the pandemic, like everything got pushed back, so I didn't know when we were going to release it. And I'm glad we finally did. Because honestly, now I can move on from it. I actually basically have another record ready to go. I mean, normally you release a record. This just came out almost 2 months ago, which is crazy to believe how fast time is going. But normally I'd be on the road quite a bit promoting this album, so things have been a little different. But that's okay. I don't know, man. I'm proud of the album. I'm glad you liked it. I spent a lot of time making sure the songs were right, making sure the sounds were right, and most importantly the parts were right, and just the arrangements. And I hope everyone likes it that listens to it.
So quick questions, just rapid fire questions on this album. What was the song that came together easiest? Like the least amount of work, it just kind of all seemed to make sense and come together the quickest. What was that song on the album?
I gotta say they're all like that. My process is that whenever the song is written, I'll demo it. Like I'll program drums, play bass, guitars, sing. So it serves as like a draft, or if any people are in film, it would serve like a pre-vis, you know, like a pre-visualization where you kind of see the imagery already. So the same thing was kind of like that with the audio, and everyone showed up at the studio and we were basically ready to go from the get-go. And that was the whole point. Yeah, and then from there, I bring, like, I'll have charts and I'll have recordings for the guys, so they have a pretty good idea of what I want them to play. And like, yeah, it'll take a few takes to get the feel right, and maybe there'll be some other tweaks. But that's why we do pre-production as well. So basically every song was pretty efficient. Like, we were just very well prepared. There was one song called Sometimes You Lie that we recorded, and I've told this story already, but I'm happy to tell it again. We recorded it, you know, arrangement-wise, it was fine, and we went to Los Angeles over the holidays, and we borrowed my wife's friend's car, and we're driving. I think we were going to Pasadena or something, just like to spend the day. And I played her some bounces, and I played her that song, and she was like, "This song kind of isn't about anything. It's like you're not saying." And I was like, interesting. And you're right. And I kind of went back and rewrote that song. So I had to go into the session and like chop it up and just change some arrangement things and then re-record a vocal for it. But other than that, everything was like basically how it was meant to be.
And that's the story of how your wife's friend got writing credits on this album, right?
No, how my wife got writing credits.
Oh, your
She
wife.
didn't.
I thought it was your wife's friend.
My wife's friend's car.
Gotcha.
But my wife said that, yeah.
Gotcha. Oh, that's awesome, man. So you re-recorded that one. So let's say everything COVID-wise ends tomorrow. What song are you most looking forward to playing live?
Ooh, good question. I think it would be Coming Back, because that song I've only performed for video. Like, we did a live stream album release show, and I did live videos last summer. That's really the only time I've performed that song with a band. I'm really looking forward to getting that one a bit more comfortable. Songs like Heart by Heart, Nobody Else, no, not that one. I'll Be Finding You, I'm Gone, It's You. I've been performing those already. Oh, What Are We Doing Here? Like, right before pandemic started, I was already playing a lot of those songs. So, which also helped for the recording process because it serves as just getting to know them a bit better. So, yeah, I would say Coming Back.
Very cool. Well, for anyone listening, obviously check out the album because it has got some gems on it. Some of the guitar playing, obviously, throughout the whole thing that we've heard today is it came together so well. Loved listening to it, and will continue to, obviously. So, last question of the interview before we kind of finish up. Let's say there is a 16-year-old kid who's been playing guitar for a couple of years now, just getting into the pedal game and maybe some slide. What advice, if you were 16, would you give that kid moving forward, wanting to get into being a professional musician? Like what insight can you give now that you've been in the industry a bit longer?
I would say, first of all, no one's going to do you any favors. So like you got to hustle. You got to make sure that you sound as good as you can. You got to make sure you're a nice person, because so much of this business is just the social aspect, meeting people, networking. Just be a nice person, be professional, be someone that you would want to work with, but most importantly, spend time on your craft. Don't compare yourself. Don't try to fly before you can jump. Like, put in the time. If you want to do something right, do it the right way. If you want to be sophisticated, put the time. There's no substitution for time and like those 10,000 hours. It's going to pay off so much more to do it right than to do it half-assed and to get you there quicker, because at the end of the day, you might get there quicker, but you're going to be left with a bunch of gaps in your playing that you're going to wish you spent more time with. So, network, be as great as you can be, put time in, record yourself, learn as much as you can, listen to as much as you can, play with as many people as you can, be the worst person in the room, and just stay humble and just be a nice person.
Love it. So this has been our interview with Ariel and going through your pedal board. Thank you so much for your time, man, and giving some insight to us. And again, check out Headway, the newest release, and we will see you next week on another video on the Goodwood Audio YouTube channel. See ya.